Listeners, hello, welcome to For The Fans. It's another week of football and it means we're back. I just want to apologise first and foremost for the fact we weren't on YouTube last week. Is it your fault or mine, Jack?
Whose fault was that?
I was DMing Ben and Ben said, I'll sort it.
Yeah. It was on iTunes though, you know, and it's always on iTunes first, listeners. I'm joined this week by two of my favourite friends. Work the Space, Jack, hello.
Good day, mate.
And Callum Keen's with us. Hi, Keeno.
Good evening. We're trying to get this in before the Liverpool game so these two can go and...
Yeah, and that wraps it up for this week. So we'll always care from us, for the fans now. Let's crack on. We'll start, though, with no feature, no Proudy, no feature. That's the new system, I think. We didn't get Jack involved, so it's just no feature.
I've tried doing features. They weren't well received.
No, they were good.
I thought yours was good last time.
Yeah, better than Proudy's. Right, then that's going to... Because I always said that does wrap us up. It doesn't wrap us up. That leads us nicely, though, on to some of the football. And there was a big game at the weekend. One of the biggest games of the season so far. It was Arsenal... It doesn't. It was Arsenal 2, Spurs 0 at... Was it at the Emirates? Was it the Emirates, wasn't it? Yes. And Arsenal... I mean, I don't want to say I predicted it last week, Keno, but I said I felt like Arsenal would sneak it. And Arsenal...
I can't remember what we said last week.
I think we said 2-0 Arsenal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But
I think we did.
But regardless, they've had a fantastic performance against Spurs and got themselves the win, Keno. So was it surprising for you, or what did you make of it all?
I don't know, because this is just part of the regular Arsenal cycle now, isn't it? Where they do... occasionally have a really good performance against like a top 6 team, and then everyone's like, oh, why can't they do this every week? And then they'll win a load of games against teams that they should beat, and then the next game will come round, I don't know, like Chelsea away, and they'll crumble again, and then it'll go back to grievance, and then they'll win a few games against teams they should beat, and then we'll get to another game where they, you know, I think Spurs, I mean, obviously credit to Arsenal because they put in a good performance. Harry Kane and Dele Alli clearly weren't fit, and I think Christian Eriksen from his sort of endeavours last week against Ireland looked pretty off the pace. I think really Spurs looked very jaded, and it was interesting that Arsenal didn't actually, because Lacazette had obviously had a big week, scored twice for France, played really well. Ozil had played for Germany. They'd had international players quite involved, and it was just interesting that they managed to recover easier, and even the players that didn't travel for Spurs didn't look as though they'd had that sort of week, 10 days off. It was pretty, we
can't really say that for the England players in my book either, because the England players didn't go anywhere.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, despite that break, they still
they were still in and around London. Like they weren't really travelling particularly. Arsenal obviously got a big game coming up in the Europa League, but no, it's a good win, Jack. And for Spurs, I think at this point we're sort of disappointed that we didn't see more from them. It was a poor performance from Pochettino's boys.
Yeah, it was a little underwhelming. You mentioned a few of the England players kind of jaded and missing. Of course, Danny Rose wasn't even in the match squad for this game.
He's fit, isn't he? He's fit.
He is fit. There's been rumblings of discontent. Of course, he did go public during the transfer window back in kind of August time, saying he wanted that move. And, well, I don't know if there's more going on there still, but obviously Ben Davies is coming in his place. But I feel like you guys summed it up quite well, really. It was very lethargic from Spurs. They didn't quite look up for it. And actually Arsenal, a team who I think it's very easy to criticise, particularly against kind of smaller teams, as a team who don't really get up for the end. They don't always look like they care. They turned up big and they worked really hard as a team in this game. I think it was Alan Shearer match of the day talked about the pressing. It was very, very noticeable, I felt like, in this game.
Is it noticeable because they never do it?
I mean, perhaps, I feel like for some teams doing the pressing Arsenal were doing, you wouldn't even comment on it. But I feel like given the way that Arsenal sometimes play, it was a bit standout. Of course, there were some stats floating around. I think Pochettino's won 1 of 18 away games against the top 6.
Yeah, that's
Spurs manager.
For me, that's quite brutal, actually, Pochettino, because he's given so much credit for being this great manager. But that record, it's a little bit, and this may perhaps a bit harsh. But you remember when Moyes was at Everton? And they would be quite good against all the lesser sides, but then face one of the bigger teams.
I think that is harsh.
But you know what I mean, though. Worth saying, by the way, Spurs have won nothing so far, but we act like they've been sort of winning trophies left, right, and centre.
They feel like they're entering this era, and it's either going to be the era where a bit like an England.
That era by now.
It's a bit like as an England fan, where it's like you've had that golden team, and they've not really achieved anything, and they have this opportunity right now to make it or waste it. And I feel like for Spurs, we've seen them finish second, of course. They bottled the second place the year that Leicester won the league. This is a Spurs team where I think if they were to start churning out some of these results against the top six away from home, that is and can certainly be the difference between winning the league and not winning it.
Having said that, I don't think Chelsea last year had a particularly great record against the top six, and they went and won the league.
But look at Pochettino's record, though. We're talking about not playing brilliantly against the top six or grinding out the occasional result and having, one win in 17 or 18?
We're talking over 3 seasons here as well. Like, this is a problem that you'd hope would have been addressed by now in some way. And I feel like it's one of those stats where it's really easy to quote and reference right now. We could be looking forward in, say, 6 games' time, and he's won 4 of them, and suddenly it doesn't look that bad. But I feel like it's certainly something that's worth scrutinising a manager over when it's as poor as it is. And I feel like Spurs fans will have felt going into this Arsenal game, this was a very winnable game. Arsenal,
they were the favourites, I would say. I don't know if they were with the bookies, but I think from the outside they certainly look like the team in form, the team ready to win the game.
It was, and I think that the margins. Having said that, I don't think Arsenal, Wenger tactically gave a masterclass to sort of outplay Spurs. I think the Mustafi goal was indicative of the fact they just didn't look at the races.
Well, should we talk about the decision that led to that?
Just quickly on that though, on Wenger not tactically outdoing Pochettino, he's obviously told him to work. He's obviously told him to work harder, and it was quite clear. But there's, what I mean by that is there's a way, as Jack pointed out, right, the way Shearer brought it up to do with the pressing. If you're instructing your team to press like that, you need to make sure everyone's on board with it. Now, I don't know if that's on Wenger or the players, but so Jack said he was almost surprised by it. For me, that's because it is, as I say, we don't see it very often. We don't see an Arsenal team play with work rate very often. It's very much sort of, I wouldn't say lackadaisical, but there's this almost arrogance that has always sort of existed around Arsenal, which
always
makes them
try to outplay.
Which they always want to be the Guardiola model constantly, and they're not quite there. But when you see the players like Sanchez is the best example for me. He's the best player in that team by a bit of a distance, for my money. But when you see him working hard and tracking and making sure he's closing things down, put Spurs under a lot of pressure. And I think to be able to do that again, well, this is Spurs, remember. This isn't like, he's not doing it against one of the lesser sides in the league. He's doing it against a side that are known for their work rate, that are known for their pressing. And they outworked Spurs. And we don't see that very often. And we're quite critical of Arsenal, I feel.
And even Ozil as well, a player who gets a lot of criticism for his lack of work rate. I don't think he was closing down as much as some players, but he was certainly putting it in his shift, it felt like.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned it, but we kind of went on a bit of a tangent. The decision with the free kick of the Sanchez incident that led to the Mustafi goal. Obviously, I'm not sure. Was it Mike Dean in charge? I say this like I'm shocked. I'm not shocked. It was definitely Mike Dean. It was a Mike Dean type of decision. But there was the free kick that perhaps wasn't. I feel like in this kind of situation, I should throw it to the floor and be like, was it a free kick? But I feel like it's kind of obvious. It wasn't.
It wasn't a free kick.
So we don't need to. And it was offside as well, albeit by an impossibly narrow margin.
I hate those offsides. I actually think, and this might be controversial to say this, I think daylight should be the rule with offsides.
Whoa.
I don't know what's wrong with having a little half a yard.
No, I don't agree with that.
I quite like the idea of daylight. I think it's too hard for linesmen.
You could be sort of leaning forward and get like a
50%. I think what about 50% of your body?
I feel like you've now realised this is a terrible idea and you're now clawing it back.
Exploit that rule.
Yeah. Wasn't daylight the rule for a short time though?
I mean, I don't remember it and I don't want to remember it.
Was it just talked about? Well, I'm on board, FA. Dear the FA, I think I've somewhat like my dad. I think I'm becoming my dad who just wants ridiculous rules placed in football. But no, I want to. My dad once said, this is a great rule actually, that when the ball goes out of play, they should have a ball boy mark it so it's exactly where it is, because he hates it when players take the advantage of like stepping forward.
I quite like that, give him a kind of invisible foam.
It's not a stupid rule. It's not a totally
kind of invisible foam for every ball boy.
He says. He gets very irate about it. Just go, cheating. Basically, no, it's fine. No one's bothered by it, Dad. Everyone's fine with it. No, it's cheating. Don't like it. He also thinks holding the ball in the corner should be banned. Just generally.
I think we should make the corners of pitches circular to stop that.
I mean, would it stop it? I still feel like you could find a corner somewhere. But no, Jack, you spoke earlier about the golden generation in Spurs, and I want to dig the golden generation out a little bit in this game, because first we'll start with Harry Kane, actually, who I think is carrying more of an injury than is perhaps being let on. The way he moves and Harry Kane's. We talked about work rate, right? Harry Kane's work rate is one of the best in terms of strikers, and I think the team then play off his work rate. We talked about the way Sanchez does it. I think Kane actually does a similar thing. And when that's not as evident, I'll be interested to know how much he ran comparably to other games perhaps this season. Maybe, like, for example, against Liverpool, how much he ran comparably. He just looks like he's carrying something and he's not massively sure of himself. And I think that affects the players around him because they know they're not getting the same Harry Kane. As someone that's had a knee problem, it just... I knew the feeling. There was a few moments where he either didn't chase something down when he could have done, or he turned and he sort of laid it off. And I think ordinarily Kane would probably take it on himself. He just looked like he was managing himself a little bit, like too much.
Yeah.
It was strange. I wonder about that one. Second person I want to dig out, and I don't know what you boys thought about this, but if anyone else in the Premier League would have put in this performance, it'd be getting absolutely bollocked. But Dele Alli was anonymous for me during the game. Did very, very little. And for someone that is now trying to consider himself one of the top dogs in the Premier League, you see him get him showing his FIFA stats, and he's like genuinely, like, he looks very annoyed by it, like that he's not being. So he obviously thinks he's a very good player now. For me, these are the sort of games. I think someone made the point on Twitter actually. If Ozil had done that, everyone would be going after him. But when it's Dele Alli, everyone gives him credit for being a bit younger. But we've had a couple of seasons as Dele Alli now. We know what to expect, and this is where he's got to turn up. It's not unfamiliar territory for him to play in big games like this. He's not. He's got an older head now and older legs on inside of maybe a young brain. This is a weird analogy, but you know what I mean. Like, we've seen Dele Alli
legs inside your brain
play at this level. No, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. He's played a lot for his age to the point where he's one of the more experienced players in this Spurs team all of a sudden. And I just think, I don't know what you boys thought. How did you rate Ali generally? I think he'd have been dug out.
To offer him a little bit of sympathy, I think like Kane, Pochettino tried to took a chance on their fitness, and neither of them looked fully fit. I don't think that sort of necessarily means that he sort of gives him a full kind of free pass, because I don't think he looked that good and missed a very good chance as well in the first half. And so, but I think the sort of Dele Alli's form this year has been a bit of a sort of wider talking point anyway. He looked as though he'd begun to pick up actually sort of around the last group of Champions League games and in those Premier League matches that they'd played, away at the Bernabeu. And then at Wembley as well, and he looked a bit better. So I don't know, maybe I'll give him without sort of sounding like a kind of English kind of sympathiser. His form had looked to pick up, and then he got that injury. So let's see when he gets back fully fit before Christmas.
So far the season, he started 11 Premier League games, 3 goals, 1 assist. I think if Spurs want to seriously challenge for a league title, I mean, I know City are too good this year, but Spurs on the right sort of. I know Kane's been banging them in, right, but we've not seen the best out of Ali. What do you make of Ali, Jack?
I think a lot of people were expecting more of him this year. I thought last year he set the bar very high, and given his age, people kind of expect that upwards trajectory, I guess, in terms of a player's career. I feel like it'd be harsh to say he's on a decline by any means, but I feel like people are expecting him maybe to take his game to the next level. And right now, I feel like he does go missing in some games. I feel like he contributes immensely when he does contribute. I feel like he deserves criticism for this game, because I feel like criticism is kind of how players like Dele Alli are going to improve when they don't feel quite as untouchable as perhaps sometimes he gives off during various appearances he's made in online media. But no, I feel like for him and Kane, I think it's a fair point what you guys brought up. I do wonder if that their kind of fitness was as serious as their performances kind of represented. Should Pochettino have considered dropping them? I know that would have been a massive call to make. But I don't know. I wonder if Pochettino might have changed things up if he was given a second chance, given how this game did play out in the end.
I think it's worth saying then that Ali has started against United, Arsenal and Chelsea this season. Not a goal or an assist to his name. And he didn't have 1 assist this year, Ali, in the league. It's not great against West Ham, that is. You think about the amount of goals Kane scored, they're not coming from Dele Alli. So
no.
It's curious. Right, shall we move on? Hashtag WBA, gentlemen.
We've been building up to this for months, so I'm
Chelsea won 4-0.
Arguably, we have been stoking the fire here on hashtag WBA.
It's one of the greatest days in podcast history. No, Morata got one. Eden Hazard looked really good, which is something we've not seen, I don't think, for a little while. and Marcus Alonso got a goal as well. That's not really the story, though, listeners, and I think you know that deep down. The story is that...
Are we going to claim responsibility for at least, helping
Can I
to
just
topple
say,
the Pulis
we
regime?
do sound
I
like
don't think we
extremists there, claiming responsibility. Like, what we
Yeah,
tweet out,
I-
#WBA.
I don't want to claim responsibility for the sacking of Tony Pulis. What I will say is that the hashtag WBA, well, hashtag, has been...
It's been ruined, really. I'll be honest.
It's not been ruined, Jack. This is peak.
No.
Right
Hear
been
me
the golden.
Hear me
the
out.
golden era.
Hear me out. It's been ruined because now there's all news outlets and non-West Brom fans using it, which
No, Jack,
pollutes,
that's not the case,
it
mate. I'm
pollutes
sorry.
the tweets.
You just got to dig.
No, there's loads.
I don't
There's
like
loads.
digging.
There's literally loads of them. Like,
You got any, Ben? You got any to reel off or not?
I mean, I could literally just pick at
Pick
will
one.
here. Heart of hearts, I would rather have gone down with Pulis than see Pardew rock up. Hashtag WBA.
He's available.
I mean, again, just literally go for any of these, really. 2 of the 3 teams below West Brom at present have been managed by Alan Pardew. I'm sure there's a message in that statement. I don't know if you've heard, boys, but Pardew is like one of the front runners, along with Martin O'Neill. Not Martin O'Neill, sorry. O'Neill, I forget his first name.
Michael
O'Neill, thank you. One of the favourites. It's just
that would be a strange appointment. That would be worse than Pardew, I think.
When Pulis was sacked, I looked on hashtag WBA. I ran to it almost, right? And it was like he'd died. It was like, thank you, Tony, for everything, but we need to move on. And it was like Tony Pulis had been killed off by the West Brom hierarchy.
Today, Robert Mugabe is left as dictator.
Well,
of
is Tony
Zimbabwe.
Pulis going to go take over Zimbabwe?
Well,
I think what a coup that would be.
Quite literally.
They've got some good
reaction.
potential.
What are Mugabe's odds on the West Brom job?
They are dancing in the streets of Smethwick outside.
I mean, this has taken a turn, I'll be honest.
Would we rather that Pardew was in charge of Zimbabwe? Or
I would
West
love
Brom
that.
in
That would be
champion?
amazing.
Pardew in charge of Zimbabwe.
Oh, Brexit
It'd be good
Brexit might need
for
a
about
new
2 years. and then
Brexit might
everyone
need
would
a new
hate it.
spearhead, so...
Oh, blimey, heavens above. So, no, Tony Pulis has been sacked. And I actually tweeted out earlier today on the ForTheFans account. I wanted to know what fans of West Brom were actually thinking and what the problems were. Most people put it down to a bad defence. A lot of it is to do with the system that he plays.
Bad defence being a really interesting one, considering that Pulis obviously is famed for his defence.
Well, in terms of, I think the issue that they're not always fit. So, like, as much as they wanted to play with quite a defensive style, they didn't necessarily have that defensive style to play off. I'll read one comment actually here, which is the things Tony Pulis was good at, in brackets, set pieces and frustrating oppositions, completely disappeared. The football, which was already tough to watch, became unbearable. I haven't enjoyed watching West Brom games in a long time. And I think that might be it.
Well,
we've got another one here. I'll
He
quickly
signed
read it
a new
out.
contract in the summer, didn't he?
Yeah, but don't you think that's always to try and give everyone a little bit of a lift, and it's not worked? We'll just read another one quickly. Tactically inept, creatively void, defensively woeful, lost interest halfway through last season. 2 wins in 20.
That was
kind of
interesting.
That tells the story. Refusal to admit any fault of his own, instead blaming the fans, claims that success is haunting him when we haven't progressed past where we were under Roy Hodgson.
That one point in the middle there is quite interesting about the way that they came 10th last year, right? And that was obviously on the back of their...
They started really well, do you remember?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they had a good sort of first 6 months. Like I feel like it was once they did hit that 40 points gap and mark and got to around that mid-table, that it just seemed to fall, like all motivation seemed to just drain out of the squad within the space of a few weeks. And it's really interesting because we just mentioned Pardew, that tends to happen to Pardew teams, and it's probably quite an interesting thing that seems to happen to quite a lot of teams in the Premier League. And once you sort of, even from like over a summer, if you take your foot off the gas in like the January or February of the season before, as we've seen with Albion, it's really difficult, even with a pre-season and a transfer window and a summer and a new season, to sort of get the motivation back. I feel like you'd have to do a lot of changes to the squad to kind of get that malaise sort of out of the team, if you know what I mean. And because that situation that happens to Albion, obviously it's quite exaggerated because it's resulted in Pulis being sacked, but I feel like that situation happens quite a lot to teams, particularly in that sort of mid-table bracket.
Pardew's Crystal Palace did it, if you remember.
Yeah,
there was a very similar situation there. Jack, what do you make of the whole Tony Pulis debacle then? A lot of people are saying now that the best man for the West Brom job is probably Tony Pulis. Then getting back in with a refreshed attitude. What do you think's next for West Brom, and how do you view the fact he's been sacked? Right, wrong decision? What do you think?
I think, you have to look at them. They've won 2 of their first 12 games of the season. They're in 17th right now. I think, as you guys said, they finished 10th last year, but their form was awful at the end of the season. But it was kind of a case of the earlier season form had pasted over the cracks a little. I was surprised when he got a contract in the summer. I think a lot of West Brom fans were a little begrudged about that, weren't too happy. I think for some of them, they felt like...
They spent some money as well.
Exactly. Obviously, the new owners came in, last year. Was it last year? Kind of start of this year? The calendar year I'm talking about here. Clearly, they have ambitions to the club. I feel like the thing for West Brom is I hate to say it sounds really harsh, unless they spend massive amounts of money, they're only going to be a mid-table club. I guess the way they have to look at it is, are they in mid-table right now? The answer is no. They've they've lost 4 games in a row. Granted, one was against City, one was against Chelsea, but they've just looked pretty woeful. Defeats away at Southampton, Huddersfield away. Yes, they're not easy games to go to, but if you're a team striving for mid-table, those are the games where you want to be taking at least a draw away from home.
Well, Jack, can I just jump in there? Because as you say, this is, I think, you mentioned there about expecting to be a mid-table team or where the fans expect them to be. I think this speaks to quite a few other teams in the Premier League right now. Swansea's the one that springs to mind, because if you factor in, if you kind of account for like the last sort of 5 or 6 years, for both Swansea and West Brom, really, they've been doing quite well in the Premier League. They've been fairly stable. But historically, and even in the last sort of 10 years, particularly Swansea, have come from pretty much nothing to landing in the Premier League with Brendan Rodgers. Those clubs aren't always sort of established mid-table Premier League teams. I mean, you'd say even there are quite a few teams in the Championship now, I couldn't think of any off the top of my head, that had been sort of, even for the last sort of decade, were more established in mid-table but have gone down. And I just think perhaps that the expectations of, maybe we'll see Paul Clement be sacked soon because of Swansea's poor form. We could talk about that as well, but we probably wouldn't have time. But maybe the expectations of fans of both those clubs are maybe a little bit inflated based on the last sort of 2 or 3 years of
from their perspective, they're football fans and they want to see their club achieving things. So it must be it is the malaise, isn't it, of this is where we are now. I guess this is what we have to deal with.
But what I mean is West Brom fans aren't strangers to relegation battles, and they've had.
But they want to be pushing for Europe at this point. If you ever finish 10th, I feel like 7th is not that far off. You want a bit of a cup run. And they've not had any of that, it feels like. They've constantly sort of been in this endless loop of, I don't call it nothingness, but I've summed up West Brom before, and West Brom fans, you won't like this, but it's not a dig at you, but I just don't care about anything they do. They're just one of those clubs that exist in the Premier League that I have no dislike or like for. And I feel like a lot of Premier League fans, they hear that the news Pulis has been sacked and they sort of just go, all right, yeah, good.
I think that's part of the football and the style.
But don't you feel like West Brom fans have started to become and feel a little bit like that? They're almost at a point now of what do we expect? Like what do we look forward to with the West Brom game? Part of football, I think, is looking forward to the next game. No matter what happened in the last game, like even as a Villa fan, right? Last year,
I was going to say I've had this with my club.
Yeah, when you got relegated, you had points. More, it's probably quite a lot worse because you sort of knew for a long time you were getting relegated, but you couldn't look forward to the next game. And now you're at a point where even though you're in the Championship on the bruise and whatnot, but you can look forward to the next game and you can see a bit of progression. I think for West Brom, the progression is so merged into the style that it looks as if nothing's happening, and it must be extremely frustrating for the fans just to sit there and watch it every week. And as much as Pulis might get results, I think football is for a fan, sometimes it's almost more than results. It's about enjoying watching your team.
Yeah.
And Tony Pulis doesn't. He doesn't give enjoyable football, does he?
I totally agree. And I wonder if that may happen to a team like, I don't know, Burnley in the Premier League, if maybe the development doesn't. Yeah.
Well, Burnley are like 3 or 4 years behind West Brom.
That's what I mean.
In that regard, aren't they? But you wonder at this point that Dyche might be looking at these sort of situations and thinking, well, Tony Pulis never took a big job. Like, Tony Pulis has never been at a club, in my opinion, bigger than Everton. So say Everton come calling this week for Dyche, he might be sitting back in his chair thinking,
maybe I should take that gamble.
Do I want to be the next Tony Pulis? It's a very difficult. We talked a little about it last week. Very difficult for Dyche, though, isn't it, in that scenario? Talk about managers that are going or managers that are wanted by different clubs. He's level on points with Liverpool and Arsenal at the moment in sort of joint fifth. point
Burnley
behind
had
Spurs.
a good win as well. We could quickly talk about that game. Actually, they had a good 2-0 win at home to
Yeah,
Swansea.
and I've looked really good. Just quickly though, before we move on to our next game, the favourites for the West Brom job. I mean,
I don't want to know.
Evans above. Michael O'Neill is, to say, top
That would be madness.
favourite.
I think you were about to say Michael Owen. I was about to walk out the room. So.
That'd be good, wouldn't
I'd
it?
quite enjoy that.
No, Pardew is up there. Of course, you've got Allardyce up there as well. It's just, there's not any names there that really inspire. I think this morning or last night, I think Michael O'Neill was the favourite. Worth saying, by the way, Martin O'Neill is also in like the top 5 favourites. Derek McInnes is in there as well. But the current frontrunner and heavy favourite actually is Pardew. Pardew is the heavy favourite to take over at West Brom, which just seems... I don't know. I don't know what to make of a Pardew appointment. It just doesn't fill me with... I don't know. It doesn't fill me with any joy. Maybe a bit more showbiz, West Brom fans. I mean, a little bit more showbiz.
He'd be dancing on the pitch.
I was about to say, he'd be a good dancer.
Oh, heavens. But no, it's not a great situation. Should we just move on to a different game? West Brom fans, you started to bring me down. All this West Brom talk.
I feel a little depressed just talking about West Brom.
I feel like doing a sad tweet on #WBA.
#WBA.
I can understand it.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on then. Let's talk about Manchester United 4, Newcastle 1. I don't want to say it's a much needed win for Manchester United, but I think it's a much needed win for Jose Mourinho, who will always enjoy beating Rafa Benitez, won't he?
I think the manner in which they won was quite important, actually.
They've scored 4 goals a lot, which is surprising to me.
Well, they'd scored a lot of goals in the first sort of 6 or 7 games of the season, and then they had this. As you say, I don't think it was like it wasn't kind of do or die.
But they lost to Chelsea, and it's one of those things that Mourinho wants to bounce back immediately, especially against Rafa Benitez. I feel like that's part of it too.
Yeah, and they'd also lost to Huddersfield a couple of weeks previously, so they'd had 2 losses quite frequently. Lukaku had stopped scoring. It was important that they sort of got this result, I think, to just get back on that kind of track that they'd sort of started the season on. I think it was really important that Lukaku got his goal, and I think this game just showed how big a difference Paul Pogba makes to this Man United side when he's playing well. I was really impressed with just... And how long's he been out injured? About 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. I was so impressed with the way that he just slotted back in. With seamlessly, and their midfield just looks so much more dynamic with him in it. Obviously, he assisted the first goal with a beautiful little clipped cross to Martial, really, and he just looks like he has so much time on the ball. He's one of those players that, while playing and doing things at great speed, just looks like he isn't rushed at all. Yeah. Never looks like he's sort of hurried on the ball. And it just makes him so much more dynamic. And I like the midfield that he went with in Matic, Pogba and Mata. I think that's got a really nice balance because Mata sort of plays the furthest up of those 3.
Very different players, all 3 of those.
Exactly, which is why the balance is so good because obviously then Matic holds and Pogba has that freedom in between the 2 to roam, to go left and right. And I also thought it was interesting how Mourinho went with Martial and Rashford either side of Lukaku in this game. They look really dangerous as a front 3. Obviously, Martial got his goal. Rashford got a beautiful assist for Pogba's goal. And he'd been swapping Rashford and Martial around in a bid to sort of try and keep Henrik Mkhitaryan in the team. Obviously, he dropped him. And that, I want to say that's their best front 6. I think that's the best balance.
Well, there's been a bit of talk about
that's very bold.
With Mkhitaryan, he obviously started the forming amazing. I think he got some like 6 goals and assists, across the opening 7 games.
I tipped him for top assist maker, so I'm feeling a bit sheepish now.
It's a weird situation where he could actually find his kind of position at risk. We all know that when Mourinho first took over, it wasn't really his signing. It was one that he'd kind of just inherited and had to deal with. And obviously, he started the season well, has dropped him. And I feel like United fans will have been looking at, the likes of Rashford and Martial, thinking, these guys are the future of our attack, and kind of watch them wrestle for a position.
They've both been playing so well as well that you can't really justify not having either of them in the team at the moment. I think Martial was fantastic for France as well in the international break. Got a beautiful assist for Lacazette, as we mentioned, and he's been scoring goals whenever he's been coming on, and just making it impossible basically for Mourinho not to pick him. And that, I think, both those players, either side of Lukaku, have a bit more guile than I think sometimes they're given credit for, a bit more creativity. I think Rashford plays as a 10. Yeah, I think
Rashford's got quite a few assists this year, but I feel like Rashford's assists aren't necessarily from him being creative.
I think he has the ability to play assist passes when he came through playing as a 10 quite a bit in the academy for United. He's not just a sort of brainless out and out number 9 running in behind. For instance, I couldn't see Lukaku doing the same thing.
I agree with that.
Rashford does. I'm
part of that. I want to see Marcus Rashford be a striker club, as I've said before. It frustrates me seeing him on the left.
I'm not sure he needs to be at the moment.
I know people say it gives him an education, right?
He's got time.
I just want to see him. Do. I don't know. It's impossible right now because you've got Ibra. Ibra's obviously back as well, and Lukaku. He's got 4 assists, 3 goals in the league. I can't take that away from him. I genuinely think he's a very natural striker, and I don't want to see him lose any of that. In the same way, you know, that period last year, Martial all of a sudden didn't look. Oh, it was under Van Gaal, I think. Martial came to the Man United side, looked like he was playing with a real verve and a real natural ability, and then it was sort of tamed a little bit from him playing out of position, and we never saw that Martial again that season. We never saw this sort of dynamic, pacey, attacking, dangerous Martial. He's
got it back now. Though.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't want Mourinho to do that with Rashford. And while it looks okay at the moment, and he's playing a little bit off instinct, I don't want to kick what's great about Rashford out of him. Just quickly on Lukaku, by the way, there's been a news story come out.
Revelation.
Do you remember in the summer that he was having house parties and there was complaints?
Was he?
Oh, well, in the summer...
I wasn't invited. I don't know about you guys.
In Beverly Hills, him and Pogba were having parties in LA. And
okay.
So the story is then, Romelu Lukaku has agreed to pay compensation to Beverly Hills police after they responded to 5 FIVE noise complaints at a house he was renting in the summer. The 24-year-old was arrested in July. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I remember this. This was like during his medical and stuff. Well, that was all going on still.
It was close. Yeah. The week before United signed him from Everton for an initial £75 million, the Belgian will pay ... to reimburse police for the call-outs. How much? Feature. How much do we think
I can't answer
having to shell out? It means that his charge, by the way, is reduced from a misdemeanour, which carries a maximum sentence of 6 months in jail. Instead, he'll be charged with disturbance of the peace, and which carries a fine.
I've retweeted the story and made a joke out of it.
$750,000?
750k. Jack, have you? Tell me you've seen this.
£340.
Okay, well, Jack's seen it, so that's.
I'm sorry. I did say that just a second ago.
No, 340 quid. So,
he's broke, basically.
I wonder how it'll be at like $450 there. Obviously, let's put that on to Trump. You know, doing some good work there, getting some money in for the American police forces across the country. So yeah, Lukaku is.
It's getting a bit political. The podcast this week.
Is it? Keno, do you want to shift it? Do you want to dip in there? I feel like this is.
No, I don't comment on that stuff.
Don't comment on that stuff. Fair enough.
Not on Brexit.
Right. So overall, then, pleasing victory for Manchester United. Newcastle, their season. We always say this, right? But their season won't be defined on games like this. They've looked all right this season so far. So I don't think they'll be too worried. Will they? Three defeats in a row in the league, but they'll be fine, won't they? Will they?
They'll be okay in the end.
They'll be fine.
We've got no idea.
If they get relegated now, then it's going to haunt us.
It's our fault, is it? That's going to bring us to a short break. We'll be back after this to conclude our roundup of the Premier League action. Listeners, welcome back. That's our short break out of the way. And Watford 2, West Ham 0. West Ham have a new manager. And I shouldn't be laughing as I say it, but I know that it's David Moyes.
It's just quite sad.
It's just bizarre is what it is. It's not, I'm just going to openly say now, not a good appointment, boys. Not a good appointment.
I don't know how to follow that up. I was watching an interview he did where he was talking about, like, as if he was just going to leave at the end of the season if they got relegated. Like,
yeah, he sounds defeated already.
Like, has anyone explained to him how this works?
Didn't he say, I'll have had a fun time in London, or something ridiculous like that?
In East London, or something.
Or something like that's literally what he said.
I will say now, I want to be like bold prediction. I don't think it's that bold. I think he'll be gone by May. I don't think he's going to see out the whole season this year either.
That's a good prediction. It can't go much worse for West Ham. I think that's the advantage he's got. I mean, it can go worse though. That's the problem. But it can't go much worse.
They created chances in this game as well.
Yeah, but they've lost the first game, and he just looks. You see him on the touchline, and he just looks a bit like,
why I'm laughing.
because he just looks shocked. Every time something bad happens, he looks angry, but he looks like he knows people don't sort of respect him at the moment. So every time he goes to a dressing room to give his opinions, everyone's just a bit like, yeah, whatever, mate. And I think he knows that.
It was the goal after 13 minutes as well that it went in, and you were just thinking like, "Oh, come on, guys!"
It's like when Hodgson was appointed, and then
let's try and have a bit of a new manager back. It's still half time.
Speaking of Hodgson, Jack, did you listen to last week's show?
No, don't go there.
I didn't, but I did notice in the group chat there were various Owl Hodgson pictures, so I can imagine what you guys talked about last week.
Oh, don't. I can't. I'd like to think people Googled Roy Hodgson as an owl during that last week's podcast, you know?
running around up front.
I feel like I need to go back and listen to it, but I was waiting for the YouTube upload.
Well, no, we basically, Jack, I want you to picture this. Listen, if you didn't see last week's show, it wasn't on YouTube, so you might have missed it. We were saying that picture Roy Hodgson sort of just playing himself for Crystal Palace when things aren't going well. You can imagine them holding up the board and he's just in full kit to play with Wilfred Zaha. Picture Roy Hodgson as a striker, Jack. That's what I'm getting at.
I can see it.
Running onto long balls in the channels.
Heading it on. Not doing a lot of doggy runs, but sort of just a lot of hold-up play.
The image has been painted.
And how do you think he'd do as a...
He'd be pretty good, actually.
Do you? Do you think, really?
Yeah, I think owls are well-evolved I don't know where I'm going with this. I was going to say owls are well-evolved to play football, but...
So this is the problem, isn't it, right? We've started this conversation about David Moyes. It's just ended up at something else. I feel like for David Moyes...
I think that sums up David Moyes,
David Moyes would be listening going, oh, here we go, get to my bit, over the West Ham bits. So, Roy Hodgson's funny, isn't he? Like, it's not great, is it?
Will Hughes was good in this game.
Yes,
Will Hughes looked excellent for Watford.
Being a football manager player, Jack, you know all about Will Hughes.
I do, great player. I mean, going to be England's number 7 for years to come.
Yeah, he's the new Steven Gerrard,
isn't he? Listen, you joke about that, right? But I think the actual trajectory that he's going on right now is something that I think more good young English players should do. He obviously, Liverpool were interested in him 3 or 4 years ago when he was younger, when he was sort of 19, and he chose not to make that leap at that point. Stayed at Derby for another few years, got a good couple of like hard seasons in the Championship under his belt, and has made this step up to the Premier League.
Does that make a player better? That's a good question. That's probably quite a detailed debate, that though.
Because you have other examples like Dele Alli.
Yes.
Who just went straight up and it worked for them. I will say, I saw this.
Well, no, Dele Alli didn't though, because he'd played.
He
had a season at MK Dons in League One. I think that's slightly different to Will Hughes because Dele Alli didn't have bids coming in for him at that point, and I think he got signed and loaned back for that year. It's not like he rejected a load of moves. I saw Will Hughes play. It would have been the end of the 2014 season. I want to say it was Leeds v Derby at Leeds, and he was just the standout player in that game. He was the heartbeat of that Derby team. And prior to that, obviously, I'd seen a few highlights of him. I'd seen him in Football Manager, but he did look just a class above every other Championship player. And at this point, you know, he was still very young. Obviously, he's made that move this year. You'd have to say Watford, incredibly competitive midfield to try and get into the likes of Decore playing well, Capoue,
I think that's
Thomas
good,
Cleverley, Chalobah when he's fit.
He's 22 now, isn't he? And he's not a goal-scoring midfielder by any stretch. He's certainly on the more creative side.
Got a good goal at the weekend.
That's why I kind of mentioned it, because he's got that goal, but he's not a goal scorer in 165 appearances for Derby. Only 9 goals in the Championship.
Because he tended to play deeper in the sort of midfield too, behind like in a 4-2-3-1. He would play as, you know, the passing midfielder of that too. And I think that it's interesting. I'm quite refreshed by this in a way, because he'll get chances at Watford in a way that he probably wouldn't at, say, Liverpool's midfield, I think, or a top 6 team.
Well, he could have been a bit of a John Joe Shelby situation had he gone to
exactly,
Liverpool.
Yeah. And I just think that he'll get chances at Watford. The pressure on him won't be too high, but he'll still get that. And Watford are playing well, and he's under a great manager in terms of his development and to kind of develop him tactically as well in Marco Silva. And who knows? Like in two years or so, I can't. He's had one good game. Well, he's had a few, but this one game was his standout so far this year. So it would be premature to kind of big him up in any sort of way. But I think if he can continue on this sort of trajectory, it would be almost better for him, and if a bigger club does sign him, for them as well, because they'd be signing a more complete player who's got 2 years of Premier League experience now under his belt as well. I think we're often quick to sort of rush good young English players into sort of big clubs. There's history, the last sort of 15, 16 years is littered with those kinds of players who then go to big clubs and then are kind of dropped down again. I'd prefer to see a player maybe make that move at 24 or 5, where he's moving on towards his peak and can then sort of maybe be picked for England and that kind of thing in the future, rather than sort of get thrown in. There are exceptions,
you get players like that, and I feel like they make the move, but then they're just not given the chance at the team they move to. And I'm sure you're thinking of an immediate example, but I'd look at someone like Danny Drinkwater as like a player who could fall down that path. A player who was a star player for Leicester, one of their big kind of components of their title-winning season, always get picked for them. He's gone to Chelsea. He's made a name for himself at one of those small teams, and now you're talking in his like mid-20s, late 20s. He's now making that step up. Yes, he's been unfortunate with injuries, but he strikes me as the kind of player who might just not find his feet at a team like Chelsea. And
it depends on the team as well, I think, and the player.
I guess so, but I just feel like there are a few examples of that. Obviously, I'll be honest, I hope I'm completely wrong on a few fronts, but I just feel like that there's. I feel like it's kind of a bit of an old cliche that you have to play for one of the big teams to play for England. I feel like going back kind of in the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like now
more than that.
You look across the England squad, it's quite a diverse cast of players from lots of different teams, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think with him, as I say, he just needs that chance to shine. And at 22, he came back after a big injury. He did have a big Achilles problem, I think it was. Yeah. Maybe it was cruciate ligament, one of those. Where he missed a large portion of the season, came back, had a good year in the Championship, and then got his move. So his progression was obviously delayed a little bit. But he's the classic sort of English player that's touted around a lot, and we never quite see the best of him. And then all of a sudden he's 27, you know what I mean? And then it's a bit like, oh yeah, I remember when he was really good. And it won't necessarily work out, but hopefully it does.
I'd really just like to see him kick on in a performing Watford team this year and just see what happens.
Again, supposed to talk about more. He's went to Will Hughes, so sorry, David, but good luck. I quite like Jack's shout of the fact he might be gone, but I don't know. I feel like they're at quite a low base, so whatever he does,
I predicted West Ham to go down at the start of the season. That was one of my.
Yeah, I said 7th. I'm less confident now about that, so I'm a bit worried about what might happen. Well, West Ham currently 18th. You would think they're not going to be 18th in 10 games' time. 19th?
Yeah, I'll go 19th in 10 games' time.
So you think they'll be 19th in 10 games' time? I think they'll be, I would dare say, as high as 10th. They're 6 points behind Huddersfield, who are 10th. So it's still very close at the bottom down there. So it's a lot for Moyes to do. They have
conceded the most goals in the league, though.
Yeah, their goal difference is only worsened by Crystal Palace, which doesn't say a lot, really. Interestingly, by the way, Everton are then the 3rd team on that list for goal difference. Shocking, isn't it? Really shocking. Let's talk about Bournemouth, who, we mentioned it last week. They had to win this game against Huddersfield. It was a must-win. It's the first time I've seen...
They did so emphatically.
It's the first time I've seen David Wagner look a bit angry, I thought. But it is a huge win for Bournemouth. If they don't win that game, they're in this sort of West Brom, West Ham conversation a lot more so.
They've got 9 points now, haven't they, from the last 4? Like, they have actually found a little bit of form as of late.
Yeah, they've really picked up. But it was the sort of game that if they lost it, that would kill the momentum a little bit. They've got Swansea next, by the way. Swansea, then they've got Burnley, then Southampton, and then Palace. Like this
all of those are winnable.
This Bournemouth run could go for a little bit longer, and they damn right need it as well. They're in a spot of bother. They've got quite a tricky December patch there where they play, I think it's Manchester United and Liverpool back-to-back, then Manchester City, and then I think it's Boxing Day, they play West Ham. So they've got some tough games. Actually, I should say, blimey. They've got United, Liverpool, Chelsea in the Cup, then City, sort of as a run of 4. And you'd hope that in these next 4 games, then they get a few points, maybe 6 points at least, in these next 4 games. Will be absolutely pivotal.
It was good to see Callum Wilson get a hat-trick to get in the goals.
You forget he's playing football, don't you?
Yeah,
it's been such a while since we've seen him do anything. Injury. It's a little bit like, but finally he's come good again. And it's whether you can keep that going. It's the case, isn't it? It's the old cliche that if you've got a goal scorer down there, you'll be fine. And I think there's still going to be question marks over Bournemouth this season. I think Eddie Howe, it's a big year for Eddie Howe, this. I don't want to say it's a make or break year, but if they go down, people start to wonder, oh, well, we're right about Eddie Howe. But if they stay up, his reputation's not really damaged, is it? It's that sort of thing.
No, I agree. I think the potential for Bournemouth to sort of combine Josh King and Callum Wilson, because Josh King sort of kicked on last season after Wilson had that injury, and it would just be interesting to see how they can sort of form a bit of a partnership up top. Obviously, they've got Defoe as well, who can sort of come in. But I'd really like to see those two with the sort of the athleticism and skill that they've got, particularly King. I think he's got really underrated feet. He's good on the ball. I'd really like to see those two sort of combine. Huddersfield's interesting because they... Again, I don't know what people were expecting of Huddersfield, really. They had that win against United a few weeks ago, and obviously the good start to the year, so their league position is still fairly healthy for a team of their kind of expectations. But this was a worrying result, particularly as they were against 10 men as well. David Wagner was quite right to be sort of unhappy. He was also pretty unhappy with the ref because there were some refereeing decisions.
I feel like when he gets angry, it's quite scary.
Reminds me of Klopp.
Yeah,
well, he was his best man, Jack, wasn't he?
Two angry men.
We've been over this before. We're angry together, but they're better angry together than apart.
I would like to see them in a fight. It would be horrible.
Who would win out of Klopp and Wagner in a fight? Well, Klopp went to hospital this week, didn't he? We'll get onto Liverpool in a minute. But
I think Jurgen Klopp would still win, but I agree with you on Wagner. Like, he's one of those guys that would sort of say, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed, and you'd feel even worse. You'd feel worse than if he really sort of shouted at you.
So I think he's the sort of manager that would get furious, like breaking shit angry, and just being livid, smashing stuff all over the place, and then there'd be like 10 seconds of calm, and then he'd be like, see you on Monday. And he'd be like, oh God, what happens on Monday? And you'd be questioning everything. I mean, he strikes me as that sort of manager that would go crazy, but then he needed to get out of his system and then he'd be calm again.
And then he'd be fine, yeah.
And then he'd be fine, yeah. But for a moment, there'd be a fear factor. But no, really good win for Bournemouth. Let's talk about Liverpool, please.
Oh, go on then.
You put it in the running order. It was a 3-0 win against Virgil van Dijk.
Man City.
By the way, Liverpool fans this week don't think Virgil van Dijk's very good, and we should persevere with the options we've got for now. So
it's almost like there are only like 4 centre-halves in the universe when Liverpool are concerned.
Lovren, Klavan, Matip and Van Dijk are the only centre-backs to exist. So
you can't sign any other centre-backs or even consider any other player joining your
Van
team.
Dijk moves somewhere, he's sort of a Liverpool player right now, because we're all judging him based on that.
As a Liverpool fan, I do have like a vested interest in Van Dijk, which is like awful. I've never had it before with a player.
Yes, but Southampton haven't been that good this year, and he's not been that good either. Like it's not. He's not selling himself to Liverpool.
Well, Ben, I'll ask you as a Liverpool fan: do you or any other Liverpool fans have any ideas of another centre half that Liverpool could sign?
Get Jamie Carragher. Can we get Jamie Carragher back?
Yeah,
Stefan de Vrij.
I equally think that someone like Koulibaly would be a lovely little signing for Liverpool. Not that he'd join right now, because Napoli are pretty good, aren't they? So there'd be no need. There's so many players out there, like players like Laporte, players like that have just been around for a little while now and have got a reputation that are probably better than Lovren. So yeah, there are other centre backs, Kino,
who aren't Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, who aren't Virgil van Dijk. But equally, I still think he would make Liverpool better. I just don't necessarily think that he's like the 60 million thing was always a problem for me. I just thought that was way too much for a defender that's probably worth about 45, 50. So I guess we'll see. That's the January coming up relatively soon, so we'll see what happens with that. What we should talk about, though, and even as a neutral, I think people should be acknowledging this, Mohamed Salah has as many goals this season as Coutinho did last year for Liverpool, and Coutinho was our top goal scorer last season.
Arguably the best player in the league, maybe.
Best signing of the summer?
De Bruyne, for the summer, for sure.
Definitely the best summer signing. We talked about this sort of the other day, didn't we? The top 3 players in the league right now are De Bruyne, I think you'd easily put up there.
Yeah,
Salah would be there as well, and I can't remember who our third one was. Who did we say?
Jay Spearing.
Who, sorry?
Jay Spearing.
Jay Spearing. No, who was the third? There was 3 players I said had a really good year. So, Kane, of course.
Kane, yeah.
Of course it was Kane. They're sort of the 3 stand-up players, but no, Salah, the first goal for me is is so unexpected from Salah. Takes a touch on the edge of the area, curls into the far corner.
Very nonchalant, kind of just... It didn't seem to really...
Yeah,
he didn't celebrate a huge amount. He was just kind of quite...
The whole Egyptian Messi thing's come up again, hasn't it? So, what have we? We've never. Do you know what I've just realised? We've never had an English Messi We've had the German Messi. This is a bit of a feature. Who was
Joe
considered?
Cole?
Who was? No, don't be daft. Who was the German Messi? Do you
Mario
remember?
Götze.
No, not Goetze. Sorry.
Well, he what? Oh,
No, that was what Yogi Love said once. But there was a player that was considered the German Messi. Jack, come on.
Draxler.
No, it was Marco
Marin.
Marin. Marco
Yeah.
Marin, Kino.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. Marco Marin was the German Messi. But no, we've never had a
We've
British.
had the Swiss Messi. That was Shaqiri.
Yeah, true. Again, I've heard there's been quite a few players that are just quite a low centre of gravity and quite tricky, and they're just immediately called the whatever Messi.
what was the Croatian lad that Barcelona signed? The young one, Halilovic, was it?
Oh yes, yeah,
he was the Croatian
well.
Messi.
Croatian Messi.
Odegaard, the Norway Messi.
Yeah,
Norwegian
I
Messi.
don't know, bit of a different player, but yeah, again, know what you mean. Basically, good young players is what we've narrowed this down to. I feel like, but no, good win for Liverpool, and Salah looks like lovely bit of business.
Top scorer of the Premier League right now.
Yes,
First,
he is.
First Liverpool player since Suarez left to score 14 goals in a season for Liverpool.
I mean, that's a bit
so
of a worry, isn't it?
that's
But,
really bad.
It's also really impressive that he's reached that by November. Like, you'd back him to sort of go on to get.
Oh yeah, he's getting 40
like
this
They'll
year.
probably get
so.
injured.
Yeah.
Not a problem. But no, it looks really good. I think he brings the best out of a lot of the players around him as well. And for me, that's just as big a deal as anything else within the game. I think players can trust him and they rely on him. And I think that's been a problem with Liverpool for a little while, is that players have been a little bit uneasy playing with each other. But I think Mane, Salah, Coutinho, Firmino, and actually even Wijnaldum and Henderson, when they play in that lineup, there's an understanding there. And I think that's what a Klopp team has. Maybe that's one of the only things maybe a Klopp team's lacked occasionally, that in certain games we look a little bit disjointed, which is strange because then you see us play really well and you think, well, they're all clicking. But that doesn't happen as consistently as I think you would like. And home games against Southampton, sort of games that we should definitely be winning and should be winning, but don't always win.
I was going to say, they're the games as a Liverpool fan that I don't actually expect us to win. I don't see them as gimmies. I'm really, as a fan, they're the kind of games that you should be going into expecting to win. I feel like if you're a City fan, if you're a Chelsea fan, even a Spurs fan, you go into that and you're like, yeah, that's an easy one. But like, as a Liverpool fan, you go into games against like Palace and Southampton thinking, these are the kind of teams we just don't break down.
Yeah. But we look really good and pleased, I think. We've got a lot of fluidity in that Liverpool attack these days. And it's fun to watch. Right, but I think that almost wraps us up for this week in terms of our roundup. Is there any other games you want to quickly touch on?
Kevin De Bruyne's good at football. Good goal.
Well, I mean, very good at football, isn't he?
Can I just raise a point on City? I'm worried for them. And I'm... No. Hear me out here. Hear me out.
8 points clear, Spurs. 8 points clear. 8 points clear.
I am worried because we are heading into the most busy point of the season. John Stones is now out for 6 weeks minimum.
Yeah, that's fair.
Company was very lucky not to get sent off in the first minute against Leicester. Otamendi was suspended this weekend. I think City are one more defence centre back out from having a bit of a crisis at the back going into the most busy part of the season.
2 words for you, Jack. Fabian Delph.
I mean,
Fabian Delph will save the day.
I don't know what to say to that. That's not what I was expecting from the 2 words.
No, Mangala's still there. What are you worrying about?
Yeah, I would say they've got a Mangala. They have Torre, Fernandinho could all play there. Probably Delph as well.
The joyous thing about this City team, though, Jack, is that it's not a traditional you're not a traditional centre back.
No,
the amount of defending you have to do isn't it's not a lot of tackling. We'll put it that way. It's very much just keeping the ball. So, and we saw it with Mascherano became this defensive player, and was Mascherano signed in one of the final Guardiola years, but then was kept in that.
Played a good couple of years under Guardiola.
But he's the example, isn't he? That a defensive midfielder that all of a sudden became a centre back, and I could easily see someone like Fernandinho doing that. I'm not sure Delph is quite ready for that sort of responsibility, but Gundogan, you could see him do it. Maybe or Gundogan, however you pronounce it. You can see him doing it as well. There's certainly players that can do that. Does that ease your worry, Jack? Or are you
no, not really, because Pep Guardiola said it's going to be a real test of squad depth just with Jones' injury, and I think he's implied that one more injury and it's going to be a real test. So no, I think Guardiola...
8 points clear, though.
I mean, let's face it, they can afford to slip up a little bit, can't they? I think they'll still be all right.
Let's not use the word slip on the podcast. I'm still bitter.
They've got Huddersfield, Southampton... West Ham, Shakhtar, and then the Manchester derby's on the 10th of December. And that'd be a cracker. Could Stones be back for that? Maybe?
6 weeks is I think the fixtures are so packed at the moment. This is the busiest point. So any injury here, players will be missing 10 games potentially.
Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? Blimey. Okay, well, as I think they'll be fine, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Any other business, gentlemen? Anything you want to talk about that you saw in football this week?
No, I think
How did Villa get on, Keena? I mean, we might as well ask.
Great win away at QPR. We were 1-0 down, came back to win 2-1. We're playing Sunderland as we speak, and we are going to go up in the behind Sporting Club de Wolverhampton.
Oh, good. That's very good. I like that. Is that something that's been coined a lot, or have you just
just from me right then on the spot?
That was really good.
I don't believe you.
No, I'm not sure I believe you either. But either way, I very much enjoyed it.
1 and 2.
Have Pompey been playing well? Because I wonder if that's why we've not seen Chris.
Manager got a new contract. So.
Proudy's display picture has been Brett Pittman for a good
to be fair, they've won the last 3. They've been looking pretty good. I just don't know what he's been doing, really. I've got no idea.
He's working hard.
Road trip.
He's working.
Again, listeners, we're sorry the show wasn't on YouTube last week. I will take full responsibility for that.
You will.
Unlike the sacking of Tony Pulis, we're not taking responsibility for that. If you want to see more, then youtube.com/ForTheFans show will be out this week because Jack's promised he'll do it. It'll also be on iTunes, hopefully this evening, although that doesn't really mean anything to anyone else. Twitter @ForTheFans show. ForTheFans show.
Albert Adoma, 1-0.
Yes. And that now dates when the podcast was recorded at exactly the time and to the second you can figure out when I'm saying this right now. And that is going to bring us to the end. Jack, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. And Keno, pleasure as always.
Up the Villa.
Lovely. And with love with care from us at For The Fans. We'll see you again next week. And hopefully the feature will be back. Goodbye.